been 2 weeks since we last hung out in your headphones, which means the time has come again for an episode of Charge.
Welcome back. The team from Develop here on Charge is me, Louisa.
And me, Maria Cristina.
This week, we're speaking to Alberto Chierici, the co-founder and chief product officer of SPIXII.
SPIXII is an insurtech offering chatbot functionality to insurance providers.
Alberto had plenty to say about AI and chatbots, the difference between them, the different levels of AI, and their progress to date.
We also learned some surprising facts and stats about the popularity of chatbots, including when people are more prepared to disclose personal information to a bot over a human. Alberto, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background and what SPIXII does, just sort of as an introduction to our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to kickstart this project of yours together. So about myself, I started working in the insurance industry from a very technical point of view. Like I found actuarial science an interesting topic. For the listeners who don't know it, actuaries are the ones preparing risk models and mathematical models for insurance companies. Because insurance companies like to price a policy or to figure out what claims they have to pay, they have to make statistical projections. So they need a particular professional to do that. So I found the topic interesting and I started there, although I found the industry really dull. So I tried hard to innovate it from within, proposing new things, trying to leverage different uses of data. But there was so much resistance that at a certain point in frustration, I let's say, quit the classic actuarial world and moved to data science. So I was data scientist at Deloitte and built machine learning solutions.
Okay, so then you moved from there to creating your own business,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that's
So,
SPIXII.
Yeah.
So where was the idea born? Where did this start?
Yeah, so the start was basically two frustrations. One, the one I described about innovating insurance from within. And the second one was as an insurance customer, like I do get how important it is to get financial protection, to save for the future and all these topics. Although it's any online or digital experience with insurance are so terrible. It's a huge mental burden to access a policy, understand it. There are articles in the BBC saying that in the UK you require a PhD degree to understand terms and conditions of an insurance policy. So I was really driven by, on one side, the passion for insurance, on the other side, the desire to make it simpler and more accessible to the everyday person. And I met Renaud, one of the other co-founders, while we were both studying for actuarial professional exams. And he shared this big drive and passion, and so we started working together. And now at SPIXII, I head product development, so I shape how the product looks like.
Okay. Could you tell us a bit more about the product you ended up building, what SPIXII actually is, and how it works to a user?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, SPIXII is more than a product, is a kind of a digital chatbot agency. So we consult financial institutions, mainly insurance companies, but also retail banks, about developing remarkable customer experiences. And as part of this journey, we developed an engine and the technology to build chatbots. And the chatbots basically are conversational interfaces that are automated. So customers can access business services, such as opening a bank account, buying an insurance policy, by chat, and the whole conversation is automated, and live in platforms such as a Facebook Messenger or a simple web conversation interface, or even Skype. There are a few, let's say, big user-based applications that accept robots to be plugged in.
Right, so you can integrate this into any of these platforms,
Yeah.
basically. And how did you come to the conclusion that this would be the best way to go about it? I mean, there are so many options. Why a chatbot?
Yeah, sure. Fantastic question, and it brings me back to the first month of SPIXII, when we weren't called SPIXII, we were called Safer.
Oh, okay.
And initially, the idea was to build just a web portal to educate people about risks and insurance. And when we started an accelerator based in London, we were basically forced to get out of the building and not build any technology. Which is a very good approach, because there is this mantra in the startup world where you shouldn't build any technology without having proven the market first. So the first month of development was no coding at all, going out of the building, offering a lot of coffees to young professionals around London, And we talked to hundreds and hundreds of people in our previous offices, universities, especially targeting people between 20 and 35, to understand what are the pain points about buying insurance and accessing financial protections. And we found out two things in particular, very consistent in all the interviews we ran. First one is the so-called millennial generations, they do care about financial protection. It's not true what you read in reports that they don't care about anything. And the second thing we found out is that the preferred medium of accessing information is a chat platform. Like everyone, like first reaction was, oh, I WhatsApp my friends, or I open a group on Facebook Messenger, and I ask for advice, or who knows the insurance expert who can help me. So that was the light bulb moment where we said, look, we're gonna build a software that automates this type of interaction.
So that's fascinating. So you actually went out and talked to people and asked them what they thought. And were your expectations different from what you ended up?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I expected totally different things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, for example, like in the UK, the most common way to buy insurance is price comparison websites. So they go compare or compare the market, or you name it. There are, I think, 5 or 6 are the main ones. Despite the huge marketing spend of these organizations, younger people tend not to use them, especially because the information is displayed in a very confusing way. And the first amazing thing that we found out is that there is a huge difference between what people say and what people actually do. And this is why a lot of information in reports tend not to be correct. And there are reports saying, hundreds and hundreds, or, a lot, let's say bigger percentages of people use price comparison website or other tools to access insurance. And then when you ask them, you say, one example of the classic interview was, so did you have any problem last time you bought insurance? And the person would always say, no, not at all, it was simple and easy. Okay, right, so there's no problem to solve. So initially it was very frustrating. And then we started actually, okay, let me put you in front of Google, let me show you how you do it. And then you get people trying to searching for the wrong keywords. And then when they ended up eventually in a price comparison website, they say, "Oh, I don't understand this thing. What is that? Why prices range from 300 quid per year up to 3,000 pounds per year for a motor insurance policy?" And we found out a lot of frustrations. And then when we asked, "Okay, what do you do next?" everyone was pulling out a smartphone, opening WhatsApp group. And so we said, "All right, so there is something there."
So a clear pattern emerged. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
When you're talking to a friend over WhatsApp, though, you're getting an intelligent person on the other hand, on the other end, who understands complexly what you're saying. With a chatbot, there's not much clarity between the definition of chatbot and artificial intelligence. Yeah. What is it that people are looking for, and what's the difference between them in the first place?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question, and actually, let's say that these definitions matter only to technologists or the press. People really matter of getting something done quickly and efficiently. So just to provide some clarity, a chatbot can even be built without any form of artificial intelligence. It could be simple as a scripted conversational tree, and that's it. So the important thing is that gets a user from A to B. So there are ways of doing chatbots without AI, ways to do chatbots with AI. And when we speak about artificial intelligence, let's say that chatbot technologies use components of artificial intelligence. The two most common ones are natural language processing, or NLP, and some machine learning, so algorithms that try to understand patterns from data. And it's fair to say that a chatbot is AI because it uses components of AI. But there is a distinction to make, like there are 3 levels of artificial intelligence. So what we are used to see in movies, for example, that's called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And that's the capacity of machine to mimic the human brain. So it's not only recognizing patterns, it's also the capability of reasoning. Then there is a level which is called ANI, which is artificial narrow intelligence. And that's where we are today. So algorithms that are very specific to a use case. A fantastic example is a GPS. So a GPS is a good example of artificial narrow intelligence. You need to go from A to B, and the GPS will guide you optimizing paths and times or other parameters that you instruct the device to do. And so this type of narrow intelligence is where we are today. The general intelligence, we are nowhere near to where technologies are
deeply complex.
Yeah, it's deeply complex. And then there is a third level, which is what people call singularity or super intelligence, and that's where the intelligence not only have the capacity of reasoning, but exceeds the reasoning of the human brain, basically, and that's like very futuristic.
That's like iRobot, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. SPIXII isn't the new iRobot, is it? No. Just checking.
No, I mean the trouble. I say the trouble is with press and all these things is that AI is too broad. Like AI is our Casio calculator, but it can be also the self-driving car, and so it's a term that spans so many different applications. That on one hand it's difficult to give it a precise definition. On the other hand, people relate it to something cool happening in the future, but actually we already live in a world plenty of AI applications. So.
What level of AI does a chatbot need to possess in your field? I mean, are people asking straightforward questions, you're giving straightforward answers, or is it a level more complex understanding of what they need but they don't know they need?
Yeah, so chatbots are mainly very simple use cases, like straight questions, straight answers.
Mm-hmm.
Although there are there are different applications, like in the insurance sectors where we build our customer experiences mostly. We can say that there are 4 bigger use cases. One is what we call product discovery. For example, the user lands on the website, and there is a chatbot prompting some questions that would drive the user to understand that there is an insurance product and give a quote for that. Then there is let's say another use case is actually buying the product. So you can chat to the bot and make the transaction within the bot. And then you have other 2 use cases that are customer support. Like you have a question such as, I don't know, I'm going on holiday, let's say winter sport, I'm going skiing. You might want to ask to the chatbot whether your policy covers winter sports, and maybe purchase the add-on or just get the answer, yes, it covers. And the final use case is claims. So there are certain small claims like, I lost my jacket or I lost something that can quickly handle by chatbot. But more complex ones, say a car crash, it's not the ideal medium because people would actually want to call somebody, and in the middle of stress, it isn't great just to talk to a robot in that case.
Yeah.
So this is the spectrum of use cases, and most of them are straight questions, straight answers. On the product discovery side, we are experimenting a lot to understand more than understanding what people say, is understanding what behavior of customers. So what drives them to an answer to the next question or to the next decision. And that's really interesting because it helps us to build intelligence that will figure out how people take financial decisions and help them to take proper financial decisions.
And do you think there's any layer of, not mistrust, but you were saying before the press seems to you mentioned the press doesn't always shed positive light on chatbots, right?
Yeah.
How is that? How do you think people perceive that? What are the downfalls of it and what are the perks of it?
Yeah, so I would say that the general public, let's say the mass market, doesn't really care what the press says. Because on one side, so the press, what we see is made up from big tech companies, and big tech giants such as Google, IBM, or Amazon. They're pushing to the market chatbots such as the voice ones, Google Home, Amazon Echo. So they have a strong commercial interest to get a lot of buzz about AI. But if you think about it, it's again, it's not really general artificial intelligence. It's artificial narrow intelligence. So if you ask to Amazon Echo, what's the weather like in London, and you get the reply, it's 14 degrees in London, I mean, what's smart about it is just an API call to a weather service that can give an answer straight. So the voice make it mimicking what an artificial general intelligence might look like. But again, is purely an our applications. And in that case, it's a good marketing strategy for them. But for a business who might want to adopt a chatbot solution to give a service, positioning the bot as a futuristic artificial general intelligence, it's a mistake, because it would hire so much expectation from the users that the user would try just to ask a lot of questions that aren't really possible to answer. And it's really important to understand that a chatbot is as good as its knowledge base, and the knowledge base is basically the database that powers the answers. So a customer service use case in the insurance sector should clarify that at the outset. So usually the first sentence of the bot is, "Hello, I can help you to update your policy details," or answering a few questions such as, "What's my excess and limit on my policy?" And in that introduction, the user will be prompted to understand that it's a narrow use case. And again, the most important thing is to craft a conversation that gets something done quickly, conveniently, and with better engagement.
Right. So it's about speed and efficiency. It's not so much about a real interaction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see. So how does your specific chatbot work? Does it go across where do you get your information from? Does it go across platforms? Do you integrate it into a specific insurer and then they load their data onto that? How does it?
So there are many ways to build chatbots. I would say that it's difficult to say our chatbot works in this way or that way, because it really depends on the use case. So we used always to tell that the use case is king because our expertise at the end of the day is to craft the end-to-end experience from the user. And then what technologies we choose is all driven by this experience. So there are technology choices that lead us to use third-party softwares, and other technology choices that lead us to use proprietary tools that we are developing. So to give you an example, a very basic chatbot that answers a question related to a policy. Like I buy a travel insurance policy, and I want to find out if flight cancellation is covered. That type of implementation is quite simple and needs an integration with a knowledge base of the insurance companies, which is basically a database of knowledgeable answers related to the insurance policy. So these are the limits, these are the excesses, and you would link them to a policy reference number, for example. So in that case, we would use our proprietary technology to integrate in the platform, whether it is a Skype or Messenger or Slack, whatever is the preferred channel for the insurer. And we would use the technology of the insurer to answer the questions. And in this case, it's just one simple integration.
And so, going back all the way to the start, you said that part of this was born from the frustration of not being in it to innovate from within.
Yeah.
Right? So how has your experience been from this side? Do you think this works much better to put small startups in contact with the bigger agencies and get them to adapt, rather than trying to make that process happen within something that might already be quite traditional and set in its ways?
Yeah, I would say that there is a bit of frustrating even there, because the sales cycle of the insurance industry is one of the longest.
Okay.
But the cultural aspect is totally different. Because working inside insurance organizations, there are, let's say, a lot of ways things are done that are difficult to change, and cultural changes takes ages, longer than a sales cycle. So it's really difficult to move something from within, and then there is a huge pressure on the budgets, because the margins of insurance products and companies are really squeezed. And it's really difficult to tell internally, look, I want to dedicate a team of 5 tech developers to do this thing. As a matter of fact, we know the experience of an airline company who tried to do that internally, and they ended up paying an enormous amount of time, resources, and money. So it costed them more than 2 million per year to run. Whether working with the third parties is just way easier, faster, and cheaper. So, and being on the side of the agency in this case, it's really true that culturally speaking, you can do much more and learn much more. As a matter of fact, in 1 year we tested thousands and thousands of customer experiences, of scripts, of things that works and don't. Within an insurance company, I wouldn't have been able to accumulate that experience.
So companies are getting value out of it in the short term, and that the customer experience is easier. But in the long term, will there be value in the data from the conversations with the chatbot? Have you got plans for that? And what do you see that doing in this space?
Yeah, thank you for this question because it's super relevant. So let's say that in the short term, adoption of chatbots may seem something like a nice to have. But by using it, we see already some businesses realizing the value of the data they generate. And we actually invested a lot of our R&D efforts in that field. As a matter of fact, one of the proprietary tools that we developed out of necessity was an analytics tool specific for the insurance industry. And it is true that the real, let's say, long-term value that the chatbot application can provide, starting from today, is about accumulating data of behavioral patterns between, about how customers interact with financial products. And that's really great because, for example, from one of our first implementations in France, we learned purely by data that we could define clearly some segments of the market and customer groups that could not be defined by a simple focus group or a qualitative analysis. And we noticed that there are certain groups that are happier about certain interactions and become stickier to a certain brand according to what type of language or how you structure the flow of the conversation. And basically our plan is to have as many implementations as possible in the insurance space to create the best intelligence of the insurance customer. And as an application, you could use it in marketing, so to automate acquisition and marketing campaigns, but also on product development. For example, we understood that a lot of, especially younger generations using the bot, they're lost when the price is shown. And that means that a lot of pricing is not really tailored to new audiences, but it's not only about the prices, it's about the flexibility of the product. For example, a customer left a feedback that was really interesting, that the customer was presented with a travel insurance product, and he couldn't have the options to add and remove coverages options. For example, medical cover for a heart attack, 20 years old wouldn't necessarily need that. Or other things that are all packaged in insurance products. Nowadays, consumers, they believe they could select options and reduce the price accordingly. And that's an interesting finding that one of our analytics applications found out.
It's especially important in an industry like insurance, where the products very much depend on the profiles of people and the data you can get from them.
Yeah, definitely.
So a product like a chatbot AI is really absolutely the thing
Yeah.
you're using.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, one of our dreams as technicians would be to see a computer, say an insurance which is completely machine. There might be some possible applications that we are also researching, but a lot of financial protection products could be really automated end to end with just being run by a few people. And that would ultimately translate in products that are 80% cheaper for consumers.
Yeah, really cutting the cost, just put it all down to one block of computers.
Yes.
So do you think this is a vision, like this cutting the human element out? Like, how do you feel about that?
In terms of what we see as merely chatbot space, there are use cases where the full automation would provide convenience, efficiency, and reduction in costs. So very commoditized products in the insurance space, such as motor insurance, travel insurance, household insurance, would ultimately benefit from automation. Other complex products would not definitely from automation. An example is life insurance or personal savings, pensions. These are topics where people want to talk to somebody.
It seems that the one thing that's not going to be replaced by technology or computers is human creativity. But you're saying as well human emotion, and that like the feeling of bonding with someone over something, and that you're intimately known. Would you say those are the two things that can't be touched by computers?
I know by far that there is a company that wouldn't agree with that. I can't remember their names, but there is a company in London that are working on creative artificial intelligence.
Oh,
they use AI to create new pictures or new music, so it's interesting. But I tend to agree with you that creativity is really difficult to leave it to a computer. And then human, empathy definitely. Like I've seen in participating during a hackathon that somebody tried to develop a bot to help people with cancer. That was a huge failure. You can't do counseling with a robot, like not yet at least. And although there is on the flip side of that, there are certain topics where the level of intimacy is so big that people prefer to talk to a robot rather than a human person.
That's interesting.
A good example was a campaign run by I think Johnson & Johnson in a Middle Eastern country. The campaign was about using Tampax or pads for women in those regions where it is perceived a very, let's say, difficult topic to run a public campaign on TV or something like that, or even talk directly to women about that. And an agency developed a bot to help Johnson & Johnson doing that. It was really successful because users prefer much more to talk about these intimate topics to bots, especially where there is myths and knowledges to explain clearer, but keeping it in an intimate context. Sometimes robots
I suppose and there's an advantage in machines not being conscious, but not being conscious means you can't judge someone more.
Exactly. It like takes that out of the equation.
That is
very interesting. Why did you choose the chatbot specifically over, say, filling out a form, or for example logging in through your Facebook account or through your LinkedIn account and giving that data up in order to like generate your insurance policies?
It's an absolutely fair question, and so on one hand we did an experiment like in the early days when we were prototyping bots. So we launched a fake insurance company website because we couldn't sell insurance, but we tried to drive some paid traffic to a page with a form and the same page with the bot. And we noticed a surprising things. A lot of insurance companies believe that filling a form takes too long. But the problem is not timing, because what we noticed is that we converted, I think, 8 times more people buying a policy with the bot than the form. And on average, they took twice as long to go through the bot than the form. So what we noticed then by interviewing people was that the interaction build a lot more trust, because it's a two-way interaction. It's not just I fill a form, I don't know what you're gonna do with that data, and you just give me a price that I don't know how this price is calculated. So a bot can give that two-way interactions that make a business, a brand, or whoever is on the other side of the line more trustable. One of the most common feedback we received on the first testers was the experience is simple, fast, and enjoyable. Like the word enjoyable, we never heard it
with insurance.
So I think it's a nice touch that can create stickiness and trust.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes episode 5 of Charge, folks. A huge thank you to Alberto for joining us.
And thank you for tuning in. We're so pleased to see that we have a growing number of regular listeners.
What's more, your feedback is welcome. We'd really love to hear from you. You can email us at charge@develop.co.uk.
Subscribe to Charge now, because next week we're talking to Marnie Turnbull from Crowdcube, an equity crowdfunding platform taking the investment world by storm.
Did you know that Monzo raised £1 million on Crowdcube in 96 seconds, a record-breaking fastest ever funding round?
Oh, and we're also interviewing Monzo's head of fraud later on in the series, so you definitely want to be subscribed for that.
Catch you next time.